Hi, I'm Professor Good, and welcome to the Introduction to Biology 110 Life Science Syllabus. The purpose of this video is for me to go over the major topics of the syllabus so you have a good understanding of how this course runs. First, it should be noted that this is what I call a generic syllabus, meaning for your particular semester, I would have the semester filled in. For example, if it was summer of 2025, I would have the term dates and the section numbers. You're currently enrolled in what is called an online anytime course. What that means is there are no scheduled times that you are required to come to campus. What that also means is that you do have assigned due dates. If assignments are not completed by the due date, you'll receive a 0 for those particular assignments. So it's important to know the due dates and get things turned in on time, if not early. Let's lead a little welcome to Biology 110. This course explores the science of life, from the tiniest cells to the largest ecosystems. Biology is about understanding the beautiful, amazing story of life. Through lecture and lab activities, we will explore genetics, evolution, and ecology. These are just some of the topics that we will discuss during the course of the semester. This syllabus serves as a contract so you can know what to expect from me and I can give you my expectations. This document also functions as a contract, and students who remain enrolled in the course are therefore in agreement with the contract. In other words, you agree to abide by all of the things in the syllabus. If anything changes throughout the course of the semester, I will communicate that through the Canvas course site. So as I've already said, I'm Professor Good. Here in the middle, we have my contact information. I have been professor at ICC since 1999. I primarily teach microbiology, the one-semester anatomy and physiology, and this course, which is Biology 110. This course is one of my favorites because it's going to provide a variety of topics that are going to affect your everyday life. From things that we eat, to genetics, to wondering, why you look like your parents, to things like conservation biology. If you need to get a hold of me at any time during the semester, my contact information is listed here. It should be noted that I will adjust my office hours from semester to semester. So since this video is showing what I call a generic syllabus, please be sure to see your syllabus, which is listed on the Canvas site. It will have my office hours filled in for that particular semester. Email is the preferred method to get a hold of me. So if you have a question, please feel free to reach out. I do have an office and a phone number and voicemail. However, I'm not on campus every day. So if you need me to get back to you in a timely manner, please use my email. It should be noted that I can only correspond with you using your ICC email address. That means if you email me from like a Gmail account or a Yahoo email, I will reply, but just say, please send this again using your ICC email. My email is agood@icc.edu. I am going to respond to you within 24 hours on Mondays through Fridays and 48 hours on holidays and weekends. In order for me to correctly and quickly provide the answers to your question, it is important that you follow what is called email etiquette. This means using your ICC email, including your name, first and last, the name of the course, and please use proper grammar. Remember, we're in an academic or professional setting, so we want to make sure we use punctuation, capitalization, and not texting or abbreviations. The more information that you give me in the email, the faster I can reply and provide the answers to your questions. So for example, let's say you have a question about assignment 1. You should email me, your name. So let's say Amy Good and I'm in Biology 110. Then your question, like I have a question on how to complete the SMART book and what that question is like. Is it a timed assignment? And then that provides me with information so I know what class you're in, I know your name, and I know your question. If you would like to visit me in person, I do have an office on the East Peoria campus. It is 321E. During the semester, I will have office hours. So depending on the semester, I will have office hours in person, virtual, meaning Zoom, or both. Once I have my office hours listed here and on the Canvas site, if they do not accommodate your schedule, please reach out so we can make an appointment to meet either virtually or in person. Next, we have the description of the course. So I'm not going to read every single word. You should read every word on the syllabus, but I'm hitting the highlights that are the most important things. So this lists the course description, the prerequisite, and then this is a 4-credit-hour course. This is a lecture and lab course. So if you've taken other online courses, you may discover that this course is a little bit more labor-intensive. That is because you're doing the lecture and the lab at home. This course also fulfills what is called a general education life science requirement for graduation. So the next section is going to cover what you need to complete all of the assignments in this course. We have a textbook whose author is Hofnagel's, and it's called Concepts and Investigation. You automatically have included with your Canvas site what is called the ebook or e-text. This is located on Canvas, which I will explain in a separate tutorial. This particular ebook also includes access to what is called Connect, which is where most of your assignments are going to be found. Things like quizzes, SmartBook, virtual labs, and exams. Lastly, this bundle also includes Proctorio, which is a proctoring software used for tests and quizzes. You don't need to purchase this separately. In other words, as soon as you log into Canvas on day 1, you have access to all of these materials. If, however, you would like the loose leaf version of this, the physical copy, you can purchase that separately, which is optional. This can be purchased from McGraw-Hill directly or from the ICC bookstore. Next, it is important to understand where you're going to find this integrated ebook. It is going to be in a tab on the left side of Canvas that says McGraw-Hill Connect. So again, there's nothing you need to do for the textbook. However, if you go to Canvas and click on Red Shelf Opt Out, you have the choice to not purchase these through the ICC Canvas site, meaning integrate into the Canvas site. If you opt out, you will still need all of the required materials, but you'll need to locate them on your own and let me know that you have access to these materials. Just a note, if you opt out, you will be paying a higher price to buy these separately on either the McGraw-Hill website or somewhere else. You do actually pay for these materials. They are going to go directly to your ICC account. The other thing you physically need to go to the bookstore to purchase is going to be the lab kit. Each student, even if you're working with a sibling, a neighbor, etc., needs their own lab kit. Inside the lab kit, you will find the lab manual. The lab manual provides the instructions on how to complete the lab. I will have separate videos on how to complete lecture assignments and how to complete lab assignments that are in detail. So because you have signed up for an online course, it is important that you have access to a computer and reliable internet. When I say a computer, I mean a desktop or laptop. You will not be able to complete all of the assignments using a tablet, a Chromebook, a gaming system, or your phone. You will also need a webcam and audio to complete the proctored assignments. Lastly, part of the lab is submitting lab photos. So you will need some kind of camera to do that. A cell phone camera is sufficient for the lab photos. Our next section is what we call methods of presentation. So in other words, how I'm going to present the material. As previously mentioned, this course has a lecture and lab component. So what I'm going to do in the next few sections is walk through the lecture and the lab information. The entire course will be delivered through Canvas. So let's scroll down to tips for learning the lecture material. So once you get to the Canvas site, you will see on the left side of the screen, modules. The modules is where you're going to spend the majority of your time. The modules are going to contain all of the information and resources and assignments. So one of the very first thing you're going to see in a module is what is called a page. So that's an introductory page that's going to provide some tips, and it's also going to provide some links for how to complete each lesson's information. What I use to disseminate or provide the lecture information is called Nearpod. If you've never heard of Nearpod, don't worry, it's super easy and it's free. So you would click on the Nearpod and you're going to see a little icon that looks like this on the left of our screen on the Canvas site. And it would say something like Chapter 1 Nearpod. So you're going to click on the Nearpod, and what you're going to see when you open it is a sign-in page. You're going to sign in. Once you've signed in, the next thing you see, or it looks like almost like PowerPoint slides, because I have uploaded my PowerPoint slides and then I have narrated them. Nearpod is what I use so that it's as similar as we can get to being a face-to-face environment. This is the most important resource, and what you're going to do is you're going to listen, because I have personally created each slide, I have narrated each slide, and then I've embedded activities. So listen to each slide, and then there are corresponding Nearpod notes. Those are also found within the Canvas modules. So you can either print those out or you can type in your answers. Those are never going to be collected and they're never going to be graded. However, they are the primary source for lecture quizzes and lab quizzes, actually. So we could just say for quizzes and for exams. The Nearpods also contain videos, activities such as analogies, helpful hints, matching, multiple choice. You must complete all of them to get all of your points, which I will discuss on the next few pages. So now let's talk about the lab. The lab is usually the part that you have the most difficulty with because you're not used to performing labs at home. So where do you start? You're going to start by purchasing that brand new lab kit from the ICC bookstore. Then you're going to open the lab kit and you're going to take inventory. It should be noted that once the lab kit has been opened, you cannot return it to the bookstore. So don't open it until you're sure that this is the right course for you. In other words, the online format and this is the right content is the course that you want. Because once you've opened that, you basically paid for it. Once you've opened that lab kit, you're going to find the lab manual. The lab manual provides step-by-step instructions written by ICC faculty on how to successfully complete the labs. So you should read the lab manual several days before the due dates, so that way you know that you have all of the materials. The majority of the materials will be located within the lab kit. However, there are a few labs that you'll need to purchase a few additional items, such as some food items that we could not include in the lab kit because they would spoil. I will provide reminders of what you need to purchase at least a week before the due dates. So please check Canvas announcements and your email for these helpful tips. If you have questions, ask before the due date. So let's say, for example, a lab assignment is due on a Friday, and again, it depends on the semester. So this is for example, let's say it's due on a Friday at 11:59 p.m. I would not wait until 11:30 on that Friday to complete the lab. A, because it may take you some time, and B, because you may be required to purchase some items. So again, depending on the semester depends on those due dates. We will ask you to take inventory of the lab kit during Lab 1. This is because occasionally our student workers make a mistake and forget an item. If you are missing any items in the lab kit, there will be a form on the Canvas site for you to fill out. Therefore, we will be able to send you the item, or you can pick it up at the East Peoria campus if that is more convenient. All right, methods of assessment is a category that basically means what are the assignments for the semester. We will have unit exams, we will have lesson exams or quizzes, we will have lab photos, which I will have grading rubrics, discussion rubrics. We typically only have 1 or 2 discussions boards for the entire semester, and a few surveys. Next, we have a section called online resources. This section basically says, where do I find the information to complete my assignments? Everything will be found on Canvas. So I have the link to Canvas here. Obviously, if this doesn't work for you, you can go to icc.edu, and then under My ICC, you can click on Canvas. The Canvas icon is going to appear similar to the one on the left. Each Canvas module, which is where you're going to spend the majority of your time, will include the following: a lesson introduction page, which again has helpful web links, and tips and tricks. So like how to complete the lab using this. Each Canvas module will have the lab and lecture resources, things like your Nearpod notes, learning objectives. Learning objectives is a fancy way to say a list of all the things you need to know before each quiz. Study guides and Kahoots, which are used for practice. They will also have your assignments, which we'll look at the assignments on the next few pages. And then announcements. I highly recommend, if you haven't done it already, to change your settings on Canvas so that the announcements are emailed to you. That way, if something changes, you will know up-to-date information. We will also be using Connect, which is the McGraw-Hill component or the textbook component. Okay, so now we have a list of what we call course level outcomes. These are all the topics that we are going to learn this semester. So by the end of the semester, you should be able to apply the scientific method, and that's where we start the course, is with the scientific method. Demonstrate some biological literacy. We're going to look at cellular and molecular levels of biological organization. Describe something called the central dogma. We will study genetics, heredity, animal behavior, plants, animals, ecology, conservation. So this class is what we call a survey class. We pretty much touch on a little bit of everything. So your big question probably is, how do I do the assignment and what do the grades look like? So on average, it may change slightly, sometimes 10 to 15 points. This course will have about 1,076 points. So about 1,000 points roughly. And there's no percentages. What I mean by that is I don't weight things. So it's not like quizzes are weighted this amount and homework is weighted a certain amount. It's just all points. So at the end of the semester, which is this last part, final grades are assigned based on the total point earned divided by the total points possible. So for example, if at the end of the semester you had 876 points out of 1,076, that would be about an 81%, which would be a B. We also use the 10-point grading scale. So assignments are going to include Nearpod, SmartBook, lesson quizzes, unit exams, virtual labs, lab photos, which I'm going to go through each one individually. I highly suggest that you often click on the grade section of Canvas. Clicking on that will let you see each grade, and if it's something that I have to grade manually, you'll also see like a little conversation bubble or a comment bubble, and I put in comments. I will talk about those on the next page. So late policies or grading policies. So late work is not accepted. So if it was due on a Sunday and you didn't turn it in, it's a 0. Pretty straightforward. Also, at the end of the semester, after basically what we call the last day of classes, no assignments will be turned in. So the course is basically over, and then I get students emailing me saying, I just need 20 more points or 10 more points or whatever that is to get to the next letter grade. So I don't give extra credit at the end of the semester. There is extra credit opportunities, and I don't allow you to turn in assignments after basically the course is over. So right now, congratulations, everybody has 100%. So keep doing those assignments, turn them in, check those due dates, and you'll keep up your good grades. I do round up at 0.5 or higher. So in other words, if you have an 89.5, awesome, you have an A. If you have an 89.4, still a great job, but that's going to be a B. For more information on grades, GPA, etc., you can click on the catalog link here in the blue box. So here's the details of how to complete those lecture assignments. So I'm going to go through each one, try to be brief, so that way you can see how they work. Again, there's a separate Nearpod on lecture assignments. All right, so here's our Nearpod. So Nearpod, again, is our primary source for information. They're created by me, they're narrated by me, and this is what I use to make the quizzes and the exams. There's also that corresponding Nearpod notes. So let's say it's, week 1. Here's what I recommend that you do. Either print out those notes or type in the answers. So you're going to click on that Canvas module. Next, you're going to find the Nearpod link. It will take you to Nearpod. And then you are going to listen and fill in those notes. You're also going to complete the activities. Nearpods are going to vary from chapter to chapter how long they are. So the first one is fairly short, which is on purpose. And so in order to get full credit, and they're 5 points, you have to have 100% completion. And your answers have to be correct. So each Nearpod is 5 points, untimed, and you have unlimited attempts before that due date. You can check the grade book, meaning check Canvas, to see if you have reached that 100% completion. So in other words, if you're like, I'm not sure if I completed 20%, so I only watched one video, or if I did I did 100%. So if you go back in to the assignment in the grades, it will actually show you the report and the percent completed. So if you're only at 20 and it's before the due date, go back in and finish it up. Accuracy is also really important. So I will deduct 0.1 point for each incorrect answer. The reason is Nearpod actually lets you go back and change your answers. So as you're doing multiple choice questions within Nearpod, let's say you get one wrong. It will show you that it's wrong, and it will show you the right answer. So you can slightly rewind that Nearpod screen and put in the correct answer. I have to manually grade the Nearpods. So what that means is you sometimes get a little confused. Did I submit it? Did I complete it? So let me clarify that a little bit also. Every time you click on an assignment in Canvas, specifically the Nearpod, Canvas will show it as submitted. And then you panic and go, I didn't even do anything. I just clicked on it. I clicked out. So submitted does not mean completed. So if you, again, click on the assignment again, it will show you the percent completed. If you're at 100%, you're done with that one. If you're not, go back in and finish it. So I will manually grade them. I promise to have them graded within 1 week of the completion date. I'm usually pretty quick, and it's usually way less than a week, but that's kind of a little bit of buffer depending on how many classes I'm teaching on a particular semester. So go back in. I also write comments on the Nearpod. So if you had incorrect answers, I often go in and tell you the correct answers. I left this blank because, again, it depends on the semester. Nearpods are typically due on Wednesdays, depending on the semester. And in summer, they're going to be due Wednesdays and Sundays. So if you're taking an 8-week section, it would be twice a week. If it's a 16-week semester, it's typically once a week. And we'll talk about tickets a little later. So all these that say 1 ticket allowed, I'll explain that a little later. Our next type of assignment are called SMART books, which are abbreviated SB. This corresponds with the textbook. So you're going to go to Canvas, click on the assignment, which will say SMART book. It will then redirect you to Connect. Once there, it'll give you a series of questions. Things like, are you ready to start? Have you read the chapter? And then once you say yes or no, it'll ask what your confidence level is for each question. We call this an adaptive assignment because it starts with a stack of cards, so to speak. The more you get correct, the faster that stack goes down. The more you get wrong, the stack is going to get larger. So it's adaptive in that it's not going to keep asking you the same question if you got it right. However, if you get concepts incorrect, it's going to keep asking you those same concepts until you get them correct. So it's advantageous to read the assigned chapter or sections before starting the Smart Book. Smart Books are 3 points, also untimed, and you have limited attempts before the due date. These are auto-graded, so usually if you just refresh your computer, you'll see your grade. So it's kind of an automatic thing. Please check the syllabus schedule at the very end of this document or the one on your Canvas site to see the due dates. Lesson quizzes. So a lesson quiz is called a lesson. It's the same as a module because it's going to contain questions from both the lecture material and the lab material. So these are going to be proctored quizzes. There are 10 questions over lecture and 10 questions over lab. So be sure to study both lecture and lab. Because they're proctored, the only resource you can use is your brain. Otherwise, that's considered cheating. We'll talk about academic integrity a little later. Each lesson quiz has 20 points, 20 questions, and 20 minutes. You have one attempt and you cannot start and stop. So once you start it, you got to finish. These are also auto-graded, so you should see your score immediately. However, you only see detailed feedback 1 hour after the due date. So in other words, if you take it several days before the due date, you won't see what you missed until after that due date. Depending on the semester, they are either due often on Fridays, but some semesters are due, again, whether it's an 8-week or 16-week. So again, check your schedule. So I highly recommend that you do go back in and look to see what you missed because I use the same question pools for quizzes and the exams. So you don't want to miss the same question twice. At the end of the semester, I will calculate your total course grade based on the best 13 out of 14 quizzes. In other words, I drop the lowest lesson quiz. Lesson quizzes are also going to be required for photo submissions or vice versa. In other words, you have to submit your lab photos for your lesson quiz to count. I will discuss that more when we get to the lab portion of the course. Unit exams. So lesson quizzes are for each section, so to speak, chapter, depending on, or sections. And unit exams are going to cover more information. So again, go back and look at those lesson quizzes as practice before you take the exams. The exams are also proctored using that Proctorio software. The only resource you're allowed to use is your brain. They are 100 points, 75 questions, 80 minutes, and 1 attempt. They are also auto-graded, so you should see your grade almost immediately. Detailed results, so going in to see what you missed, will be available 1 hour after the due date. Typically, regardless of the semester, 8 weeks or 16 weeks, typically exams are due on Tuesdays at 11:59 p.m. They typically open on a Friday, and you don't have to wait until, Tuesday at 10:30 at night to start it. In fact, I recommend that you start things earlier. Lastly, you have what is called a comprehensive or cumulative final. This is going to cover all the material from day 1 to the end of the semester. The cumulative or comprehensive final only covers the lecture material. It is 150 points, 100 questions, and 100 minutes. You get 1 attempt, and again, you may not start and stop. The final exam is also auto-graded, so you will know your grade almost immediately. For the final exam only. I do allow you to use one, this is just a standard piece of paper, 8.5 by 11 piece of paper as kind of a cheat sheet. I shouldn't call it a cheat. It's an aid. It's a study aid. So you can use this, okay, front and back, and you can write whatever you want. You can type whatever you want on the front and back. So when you start your proctored exam, literally just kind of hold this up, show me that's a front and back. You can't have a flip book, so you can't have multiple pages, and you can't use, the study guides, which we'll talk about. You can just use a piece of paper for the final only that you've taken notes on. It is recommended to complete the assignments in this order. Do the Nearpod, filling in the notes, then do the Smart Book, then do your lab activity, and lastly take the lesson quiz. Don't take that lesson quiz until you've completed all of the assignments within that lesson. And again, we'll look at due dates at the end of the syllabus. So now let's move on to the lab. So the lab information is found again in the lab kit and in the lab manual. Each student must perform their own lab experiments and complete their own activities and submit their own photos. So even if you're working with someone in the class, a neighbor, a friend, a sibling, you have to do your own work. It's not like you can buy one kit and then take photos twice and upload the photos twice. That's considered cheating. So everybody needs their own kit. You need to do your own work and submit your own photos. Any duplicating of work, meaning you're turning in somebody else's or vice versa, would be considered cheating. And you'll both receive a 0 for those lab photo points and the lesson quizzes. So as I previously mentioned, this course is a lab course. So it's not just the lecture, which makes it a little bit more challenging than other online courses you may have taken in the past. And this is, like I said, the part that usually kind of throws you for a loop. Like, how am I going to do the lab at home? You're going to do it. I promise. You can do it. It's not that hard. So we're going to ask for evidence that you're doing the lab by you submitting lab photos. So you're going to open that lab kit, find the lab manual, start reading. Anytime you see a yellow box similar to the one below, that yellow box is going to tell you what is needed for the lab photo. Each lab requires 4 lab photos, 1 point per photo that you're going to then submit onto Canvas. Each lab is going to have a different set of requirements. So for example, lab 1 asks you for a safety contract to be signed and dated and an inventory list of your lab kit. So it just kind of depends. Sometimes you're going to watch a video and answer questions. Sometimes you're going to show me some test tubes. Every lab is a little different. So look for those yellow boxes in the lab manual so that you can kind of figure out where you are. So these are going to be manually graded by me. So again, give me a week to get those graded. I'm usually faster, but you never know. And read the comments, because if you're doing something wrong, I don't want you to continue doing something wrong, because then you're going to keep losing points. We understand that life happens and sometimes you get ill or you have family commitments that can't be avoided, etc. So for the lab photos, because they're so important, we allow 2 extensions of lab photos. So let's say, for example, they're due on, and I'm just kind of, again, every semester is different. Let's say they're due on a Sunday, okay? Let's just say they're due on a Sunday. Then you've got until Tuesday. I'm sorry, you've got a week for those. Sorry, you've got a whole week to turn them in, but you need to email me and say, I need that extension for the lab photos, okay? So whatever, lab photo 1 or lab photo 2. And then you're going to get 1 week from the original due date that yours need to be submitted. So you get 2 of those, okay? All right, big important part. If lab photos aren't submitted, the lesson quiz score is a 0. So if you don't email me and say, I need that extension, then I just assume you didn't do them, and I'm going to give you a 0 for that lesson quiz. So even if you got a 20 out of 20 in that lesson quiz, if you don't turn in those lab photos, I go back into the grade book and change that score to a 0. After you've used your 2 extensions, if you miss any further lab photos, let's say you miss lab photos 4 or 5, meaning moving forward, Those are going to be zeros for the lab photos and zeros for the quizzes. So make sure those photos get turned in. So to receive full credit for the photos, and again, there's a rubric, a grading rubric for each lab photo. You need your name and the date, whatever components I require. Again, it's different from lab to lab. I do take points off if there's missing components. If you don't have the photo at all, I take a point off. If you don't have the right answer, so again, accuracy does matter. I read them. So if I can't read your handwriting, or you typed it and you took a screenshot and it's blurry, or you took a photo and it's blurred, I can't read your answers, then it's 0. I have to be able to read them. Also, if your image is backwards, like a mirror image, then that's going to be 0. So make sure that you're submitting them correctly. Usually one of the photos per 4. So again, there's 4 photos total. Typically 1 is a selfie. So that would be, you with a graph or whatever that is. So a selfie means I need your face. If the selfie is missing, but the rest of the stuff is there, it's still a 0. I've got to see your face. This is because we want to make sure it's you doing the work. So once you're all done with those photos, so you're going to have 4 photos, you're going to merge them into one document. I recommend you use ilovepdf.com. It's easy. I actually love pdf.com. It's free. It's going to merge all 4 into one, and then you're going to upload that one file onto Canvas. I don't want you to email me your photos, and I don't want 4 separate files. I want one file with all of them in it. All right, more lab stuff. So the photos are from the lab manual. Those are really important. The second part of your lab assignment are virtual labs. These are separate from the photos. So photos are one part of lab. Virtual labs are a second part of lab. So these are going to help reinforce those important concepts in the lab portion. 3 points, untimed, unlimited attempts before the due date, and again, auto-graded. Please see the semester for the due date. You've got 1 ticket allowed, which again, we're getting to tickets for the virtual labs also. All right, attendance. So I've kind of already touched on this. Attendance, you got to participate. So if you're not turning things in, I just assume you're not doing the course. So attendance is determined by turning in your lecture assignments, things like the Nearpods, and doing the lab assignments, things like your lab photos and the virtual labs. If you don't turn things in, you get a 0. And if enough time goes by and you're not turning things in, then I may drop you from the course. Okay, so this next section is the definition for a never attender. A never attender is a student who has done nothing. So if you're watching this video, you're probably not a never attender. Next section is a non-attender. So you started off the course and you were doing good, hopefully, and then life kind of went sideways, and then you stopped doing things and you didn't contact me. You may be dropped as a non-attender. So a non-attender is someone who has not logged into Canvas at all for a week. So there's nothing happening for a whole week. You didn't do any assignments. You didn't complete anything, and you didn't contact me. So if you contact me, communication is the key, and just say, there's, whatever going on. I don't need to know details, but like there's personal things happening. Then I'm a lot more willing to work with you than if I just see 0, 0, 0, like you've not logged in for a week plus. So if you decide to drop the course, you're like, this is too hard, it's too fast, it's whatever, there are dates for that. So again, look at your course syllabus. I'll have the dates filled in. There's a refund date within the first 10 days of the semester. And then if you've gone beyond the refund date, you could still drop the course, no refund, but it would just show up as a W on your transcript. Certain circumstances allow for what's called an incomplete. I'm not really going to talk about that because it's so rare. In my 26 years here of teaching at ICC, I think I've only done maybe 5 incompletes, so we're just going to keep going. Continuation of learning is a fancy phrase to say if there was to be bad weather or power outages, what would happen? So this is an online course. So unless, something crazy is happening, we're going to keep going. So even if it's a snow day or the ICC is closed for whatever reason, your assignments are still due on that date. Now, if there's some foreseen thing that I don't know about, which life is crazy these days, I would communicate that with you. So in other words, because it's online, we're going to keep having our due dates stay as they are. All right, academic integrity. I'm actually going to read a little bit of this to you because this is a lot of things to say don't cheat. As a student in this course and at ICC, you're expected to maintain high degrees of professionalism, commitment to achieving active learning, and participating in class. So, if you want to read the details in the ICC catalog, you can read them. But here is a list of what would be considered academic dishonesty, in other words, cheating. Inventing false information, giving answers or information to other students. So even if you're just the one giving it, that's still cheating. Receiving answers, okay, from someone else. If you disable your cameras, like putting a post-it over it, etc., during, or putting your thumb over it during a proctored exam. Using unauthorized resources. The only resource that you can use is on that final. Anything else that uses Proctorio, you can't have anything. Using electronic devices. So if your cell phone is sitting next to you and you're looking at it constantly, that would be cheating. Not showing your face. I need to see all of your face. So if all I see is your forehead, I can't see your eyes, that's considered cheating. Looking around. So I don't know what you have over there. If there's somebody over there, sign language giving you answers to the quiz or test, I don't know. So you need to be sitting facing forward with your eyes on the screen, not talking to anyone or using anything else during tests and quizzes. No wearing headphones, no using smartwatches, and no use of AI. So you can read about the AI business. For this class, I write every single assignment from scratch, and they're different every semester. So it's kind of hard to cheat in this class. I've mentioned Proctorio a couple times. This is included in the Connect, so you've already purchased it. What it's going to do is it's going to lock down your browser. It's going to show a video kind of like you can see me right now. You do need a photo ID at the beginning. I don't care if it's a driver's license, your student ID, I don't care. It just needs to be some ID saying this is who you are. It does a little pre-check at the beginning, and you will have to download an extension for this. And once you do it the first time, it should be good for the rest of the semester. All right, so what happens if I think things are suspicious? So the very first time I see suspicious activity, I'm going to email you with the details. You will also get a 0 on that assignment, and I will fill out what's called a student of concern form, which goes to the dean of students. If after that there's any repeated offense, then I email you again. The assignment is still a 0. I may give you an F in the entire course. If it's a severe violation, you could be withdrawn from the course and or from ICC. So just don't cheat. Just keep your eyes on your own paper, so to speak. Here's the whole thing about course policy. So basically, these are the expectations I have of you. So you should do your assignments. You should submit them on your own, meaning, no using anybody else. Keep track of due dates. Know how many assignments you missed. If I've given you an extension, know when that new due date is. There's no retakes. So once you've taken an exam or quiz, let's say, you just weren't feeling well and you took a quiz and you're like, I bombed that. I got a 2 out of 20. You cannot retake it, but I drew drop the lowest. So just keep that in mind, but there's no retakes. And we're going to talk about tickets next. So after all tickets have been utilized, any other missed scores are 0s. So what the heck is a ticket? Tickets are going to provide 48-hour extensions from the original due date. So if something is due on a Wednesday, okay, and you just can't get it in that Wednesday, you're going to email me and say, can I please use one of my tickets for, let's say, the Nearpod? And I'll reply, yes, the new due date is Friday at 11:59 p.m. So what tickets do is give you a 48-hour extension from the due date. You can use one ticket for one Nearpod, one SmartBook, one lesson quiz, one virtual lab, one exam. Not for the final and not for additional photos. So you get those 2 extensions for photos, but you cannot use tickets for photos. So here's some tips for success. Have all your supplies. Have reliable materials, meaning internet, computer. Have a backup plan. So if you're like, oh no, my computer's been kind of glitchy lately, then maybe your backup plan is your brother's computer, whatever that is. Familiarize yourself with the Canvas and Connect sites. Check your grades often. Check email often. Check Canvas often. Make a calendar, which we'll look at that at the end of this, so that you know when due dates are. You can do things early. I have everything except for the exams open 1 week ahead of time. Do them early. That will prevent a lot of stress. So don't wait to the last minute. Communicate with me. If you're having a problem, okay, you're just struggling with either the concepts or whatever that is, contact me. We'll figure it out. Complete your assignments. Listen to those Nearpods. Don't just click, 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 click as fast as you can. I provide those narrations. Complete the study guides or learning objectives. Those are excellent resources for tests and quizzes, meaning study them. You can't use them during tests and quizzes. I have practice Kahoots. I have all kinds of study resources. Review your quizzes before the exams. There will be some extra credit, so do them, okay? Form study groups. Find a quiet place to take your exams and quizzes. And then this last part, is probably the most important part. Schedule time for this class. If you were in a face-to-face setting, you would be sitting in lecture for 3 hours a week and lab for 2 hours a week. That's 5 hours. And the general rule of thumb, for every hour in class, you're supposed to spend 2 hours outside studying. So that's a minimum of 10 hours per week for this class. So this is not something you can kind of just fly through. So budget some time. Schedule it as if you're scheduling work. Like I have, and I'm just kind of making it, let's say, I have to do Biology 110 on Mondays, Wednesdays, and Fridays from 10 to, 1 o'clock or whatever that is. So budget some time so that you get things done. Be motivated and organized. If you run into technical issues, a couple things to keep in mind. I am a biologist. I am not a technical savvy person. So here's the information that I will provide you. If it's a login issue, here's ICC's information. Here's Proctorio, here's McGraw-Hill, and here are the exact things I'm going to ask. Did you do it? Did you clear your cache, cookies, etc.? The best browser to use is Edge, okay? Restart your computer. Make sure you're logged in using the right site or your right email address. That's often the glitch. So make sure you're not in your Yahoo or your Google or whatever, Gmail. It has to be your ICC. If you're using HonorLock and other classes, then you need to use a different browser for this course. And if you don't know what HonorLock is, just ignore it. If you're struggling, here are some resources. We have free tutoring, so there's some links. If you qualify for what's called access services or accommodations, then I need that form. So the sooner you email it to me, the better. So you have to qualify and give me the form for me to provide extra time or placing your test in the testing center or a reader, whatever you require. If you need to use the testing center, here's all of its information. If life is just hard, which sometimes it is, here's some counseling information. All of these are free, okay? And a final note, stay organized, stay motivated, reach out. I'm here to help. We're in this together, and let's have a great semester. So each semester, I will have this list, and I'm actually going to scroll through this kind of quickly. This is, because it's different from every semester, the list of assignments, the to-do list. So this one is for the summer, but again, if you're doing a fall or spring, it would be similar, just changed a little bit. And so what it has, I just want you to see kind of the big picture. This is the part that if you're going to print any of these pages out, print this out. So I have the week, I have the topics, I have the due dates, and again, depends on whether you're 8 weeks or 16 weeks, how many due dates there are. And then this is your list of assignments. There's usually one Nearpod, one SmartBook, and then some lab photos. Let me go back up. So there's our SmartBook, a virtual lab, and then those photos. And then that quiz. So make sure you're doing all of the assignments. This is kind of your checklist. This also provides a place for you to record your scores. And then don't forget exam dates. So the final is at the end of the semester. It is not the same as exam 4. Please reach out if you have any questions. I'm looking forward to a great semester.